चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजाता सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजना सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादा सगणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Welcome all of you for this Tuesday evening Bhagavad Gita class. Baldevan Prabhu is out of station, so it's my good fortune that I got the opportunity of speaking about Bhagavad Gita. Though I know I am not an expert in Bhagavad Gita, but I will, now that I have been given the opportunity, I would like to say something which mostly for my purification rather than giving you any worthwhile information about Bhagavad Gita. Hare Krishna, please excuse me if I make some mistakes. So we start from 6.36. Today's topic is the destination for a unsuccessful yogi. So 6.36. असंशयात्मना योगः दुष्प्रापयति मे मतिः पश्यात्मना तु यतता शक्यो वाप्तुमुपायतः. Anybody else would like to repeat? Anybody would like to repeat the verse 36? Okay, if there is nobody, we'll go ahead. So
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, you would like to.
I have shared Prabhu screen also.
Okay. So somebody can repeat. If there is nobody, I'll go ahead.
Okay, I will set Prabhu. Asamyatatmana yogo dusprapa iti me matiha vasyatmana tu yatata sakyo vaptum upayataha.
Good.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Shall I?
Yeah, please.
असंयतात्मना योगो दुष्प्राप इति मे मतिः वशात्मना तु यतता शक्यो वाप्तुम् उपायतः. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you. Asamyata, unbridled, means uncontrolled. Atmana, by the mind. Yoga, self-realization. Dushpraha, dushprapaha, difficult to obtain. Iti, thus, may, my, mati, opinion. Vashya, controlled. Atmana, by the mind. Tu, but. Yatata, while endeavoring. Shakya, practical. Avaptum, to achieve. Upayata, by appropriate means. Purport is very small, I will read. the Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement can hardly achieve success in self-realization. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite a fire while pouring water in it. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Such a show of yoga may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. A Krishna conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without separate endeavor. But a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna conscious. So in verse 34, I'll just do a small recap, very small. In verse 34, Arjuna says that mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. And to subdue it, he says, I think it's more difficult than controlling the wind. So whatever you said is good to hear, but very difficult to practice, Arjuna says. To this, Krishna says in the next verse, Asamshayam Mahabaho Mano Durnigraham Chalam. It is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible. Abhyasena tu kaunteya, vairagyena cha grahyate. By suitable practice and by detachment, it is possible. So in this verse, Krishna continues instructing Arjuna on the importance of mind control. He says, mind control is a must. For self-realization, and without mind control, self-realization is difficult work. But for one whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means, is assured of success. That is my opinion. He says, it's my opinion. Now, many times we hear these words, self-realization. Self-realization, I also heard it many times, but we don't really pause for a moment and think, what is self-realization? We do not exactly understand the import of this. What is this self-realization, and what are the symptoms of a self-realized person? Actually, this is explained in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, verse 20. It gives the symptoms of a self-realized person. And it says, the first symptom is that he is not illusioned by the false identification of body with his true self. Next, he knows perfectly well that he is not this body, but he is a fragmental portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Next, he is therefore not joyful in achieving something, nor does he lament in losing something which is related to his body. This steadiness of mind is called sthira buddhi, or the self-intelligence. He is therefore never bewildered by mistaking the gross body for the soul, nor does he accept the body as permanent and disregard the existence of soul. This knowledge elevates him to the station of knowing the complete science of the absolute truth, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. He thus knows his constitutional position perfectly well, without falsely trying to become one with the Supreme in all respects. So this is called Brahman realization or self-realization. Such steady consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So I thought it is important for us to understand what is self-realization. Of course, Prabhupada explains in the next verse briefly. Having seen what self-realization is all about, we can now better appreciate the role of the mind control and the detachment in achieving the goal of self-realization. The goal of controlling the mind and the scope of detachment. So let us now see what Krishna says in this verse. Krishna also says here that mind control is a must for self-realization. इसके अलावा कोई चारा नहीं. If one does not control his mind, it is very difficult. Without the practice of controlling the mind and without detachment, yoga is impossible. Lord says it is my opinion. So merely because he said it's my opinion, can we disregard this instruction of the Supreme Lord because it says it's my opinion? No. For example, when a principal of a college comes to one of the classrooms and gives instruction to the students, can they ignore his instructions? No. Similarly, when a CEO of a company sends a mail to all the employees, giving some instructions, all employees have to necessarily follow that. Similarly, when Krishna, the Supreme Lord, says something, it only means that he has corroborated that all possible eventualities have been taken into consideration in his instructions, and we have to just follow it. He says, unless one exercises proper control on one's mind and practices proper renunciation, it is not possible to be engaged in any kind of yoga. But on the other hand, if you practice these controls and be detached, you will attain the goal of self-realization. So what is required to be done? We have to follow his instructions. So when a child is small, he thinks that I have to do a lot of studies, do a lot of homework, appear for exams, etc. But my parents are enjoying watching TV. But unless he controls his mind and can be detached from the pleasure of watching TV, he would not be successful in life. Of course, the so-called success. Success is not in our material studies, it is somewhere else. So let's say so-called success. Similarly, as parents, when we have our children studying in schools, we are reminded of those old days, and when we think that they were the best days in our lives, and we recall those olden days when we had no tension of carrying enough money for taking care of or managing the affairs of the family, or earning that kind of money. But those childhood days, we only wanted to, in those childhood days, what happened? Like our children, we only wanted to grow old as fast as possible and enjoy like our parents. हम जहां भी है, जैसे भी है, वो स्थिति हमें अच्छा नहीं लगता. We think that except our situation, all other situations are good. The essence of yoga is that wherever you are, you should be happy and contented. So we may also want to move fast in our lives, depending upon our karma, but to achieve success in our lives, we must also have some breaks and controls, and be free from attachments. Yoga means progress with proper controls. Follow yama and niyama, do's and don'ts. The test is, when I am moving very fast in my life, as in a vehicle, when there is a speed breaker, can I reduce my speed to 10 kilometers per hour and simultaneously change gear to first? That is a kind of control one needs to have to be successful yogi. You must be able to exercise control whenever we want. There are turns and on roads as in our lives. Life is practical. Spiritualism is also practical. So controls are needed in all walks of life, and yoga is not an exception. So Prabhupada gives an analogy here and says, trying to practice yoga while engaging mind in material enjoyment is like trying to ignite fire while pouring water on it. No use. He says, yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. Unless one is engaged in the Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. That is what Krishna means when he says by appropriate means. So appropriate means Krishna consciousness. A Krishna conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without a separate endeavor. But a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna conscious. So whether we practice Nishkam Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga or Bhakti Yoga, we need Abhyasa, practice, and Vairagya, renunciation, detachment, if you want to succeed. So Abhyasa means to follow the process of yoga, principles of yoga. We can succeed in yoga practice by following the procedures given by Guru and Shastra and by renouncing unfavorable desires. So I'm tempted to quote Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, who tells us how to live Bhagavad Gita. Because Bhagavad Gita, a lot of things, principles, but unless you live Bhagavad Gita, there's no point in understanding the shlokas or by hearing the shlokas or understanding Bhagavad Gita. You don't understand Bhagavad Gita unless you try to live Bhagavad Gita. So he suggests that the right means is to take help from a power greater than the power of the mind. That is the power of Krishna. The power greater than the power of mind is the power of Krishna. Remembrance of Krishna is the ultimate game changer. So when you regularly insulate our consciousness in the remembrance of Krishna, we gradually realize that this remembrance serves as a shield against the blows of the mind. So this is the practical example he gives. So we must think of the superior power. So after understanding how formidable are the obstacles to progress in yoga, and after hearing of the process to remove those obstacles, Abhyasena kaunteya, Vairagyena cha grahyate. Arjuna speaks the next verse. So this verse 36 was the last verse in the earlier section. Now we move to section 5, the destination of the unsuccessful yogi. This is from 37 to 45. We will not have time to complete that. Let us see whether we can complete part of this section. This section actually expands on the idea first presented in text 2.40, 2.40, where Krishna explained that there is no loss or diminution on the path of spiritual life. There is no loss for one who takes to the path of transcendence. So it is just expansion of that verse only as 6.37. 6.37. Arjuna Uvacha Ayati Shraddhaye Upetaha Yoga Chalita Manasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati. Anybody wants to volunteer to recite?
Arjuna Uvacha Ayati Shraddhayopeto Yogachalita Manasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati.
Good. Anybody else?
Arjuna Uvacha Ayati Shraddhayopeto Yogachalita Manasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati.
Good. So Arjuna Uvacha, Arjuna said, Ayati, the unsuccessful transcendentalist, Shraddhaya, with faith, Upeta, engaged, Yoga, from the mystic link, Chalita, deviated, Manasa, who has such a mind, Aprapya, failing to attain, Yoga Samsiddhim, the highest perfection in mysticism, Kam, which Gatim, destination, Krishna, O Krishna, Gacchati, achieves. So Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? So, till now we have seen for a yogi whose mind is bridled or controlled, self-realization is possible task. It's a possible task. It is possible. For a person who has never tried to control his mind, it really seems like catching moon from the earth. It's impossible. Arjuna knows how difficult it is. Therefore, here in this verse, Arjuna inquires about the fate of one fallen from the path of self-realization. In a set of 3 verses, that is 6.37 to 6.39, let us see if we can complete these 3. So, in substance, his question is he a failure both materially and spiritually? He is one who has not been successful in the path of self-realization. Is he a complete failure both materially and spiritually? In 6.38, he clarifies his question by giving the analogy of a driven cloud with no position in any sphere and asks whether the fate of the person who falls from the path of self-realization will be that of such a cloud. And in 6.39, Arjuna expresses that only Krishna can dispel this doubt completely. I'll try to see these 3 verses. We have already seen what self-realization is and what the symptoms of a self-realized person are while discussing verse 6.36. But Prabhupada here makes 3 short and specific points to explain the basic principles of self-realization. 1, self-realization is knowing that the living entity is not this material body. 2, the living entity is different from the body and his happiness is eternal life, bliss and knowledge. 3, the eternal life is transcendental, beyond both body and mind. So then he gives 3 possible paths to pursue self-realization, namely path of knowledge, that is Jnana Yoga, path of eightfold yoga system, Ashtanga Yoga, and third, devotional service, Bhakti Yoga. So in each of these paths, one has to realize the constitutional position of the living entity as part and parcel of Krishna, his relationship with God, master and servants, and the activities whereby he can re-establish the lost link and achieve the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. That is activities of bhakti. So Prabhupada says, in all these three processes, assured success comes sooner or later. Be assured that success comes sooner or later. In Bhagavad Gita 2.40, Krishna says, even a little endeavor on the transcendental path offers great hope for deliverance. But Bhakti Yoga is most suitable path in this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. Question arises when Arjuna asked this question. Why does Arjuna ask this question? Although in verse 2.40 provides full guarantee on the transcendental path, still Arjuna wants to be reassured because one may sincerely accept the process but still fail for many reasons. And he thinks, especially Jnana Marga or the Ashtanga Yoga Marga are very difficult for this age. Though Krishna advises that one should exercise control on mind by suitable practice and detachment. But it is not always possible. Then he thinks, first of all, one may not be sufficiently serious about following the process, particularly in this yuga of Kali, in this age of Kali Yuga. Then he thinks, even after constant endeavor, one may deviate because to pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on the illusory energy of the Lord. And yoga chalita manasa, that is deviation from the transcendental path, in this verse, Prabhupada says, is very, very important to note. A conditioned soul is always allured by the modes of material energy, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing the transcendental disciplines. Arjuna is quite inquisitive to know the results of deviation from the path of self-realization. So Arjuna's bewilderment is quite natural. One can understand that. What he asks Krishna is, someone wants to come to you with full desire and determination and faith initially. But since the desire and determination do not always remain the same all through, and over a period of time, if they get slackened, what is his fate? He has tried his best to come to you, but it did not turn out to be successful for various reasons. So what shall I do? What should he do? Why try to do many things to come to God and we try to do that, and we also try to do many things in our daily life also. It is like a New Year resolution of a student who thinks that he will study very hard this year and come out with flying colors, or of a smoker or an alcoholic who takes a New Year resolution that I will give up smoking or alcohol. How long does it last? We all are accustomed to fall down. Arjuna knew this weakness of human beings, particularly in the age of Kali. So here we see, and we can so much relate how scriptures are very, very authentic and practical. Krishna told us how he could be achieved. Arjuna had a doubt. His mind was not ready to accept what Krishna said. It's not that he doesn't want to accept, but he did not understand the instruction properly. So when you don't understand the instruction, you should have a doubt and you should ask questions. I may start with all enthusiasm, but later that enthusiasm may not last. What shall I do? So, my Lord, what happens to be? Is it not practical? So Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 7.3, Manusyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatata siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvatah. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor to perfection, for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Lord says here that very few people know about me. Knowing Krishna and becoming his devotee is not an easy task. So definitely he must have Dhrada Sankalpa if he wants to achieve Krishna. That is why Arjuna says here that he has Shraddha. लेकिन श्रद्धा पूर्वक करने के बाद भी yoga chalita manasa, mind gets deviated from the mystic link due to worldly mindedness, and thus attain perfection in mysticism. मन विचलित हो ही जाता है. So केवल श्रद्धा से चलती है क्या, काफी है क्या? नहीं है, बहुत प्रयास चाहिए, दृढ़ संकल्प चाहिए होता है. So Arjuna's question in such case, what happens? So Arjuna clarifies his question in the next verse by giving the analogy of a riven cloud. So we go to verse 6.38. Do I pause here? Any questions? Okay. Kachinno bhaya vibrastah chinna bhramivasnashati apratishto mahabhavo baho vimido brahmanapati. Anybody would like to recite? 6.38. Okay, there's nobody, we proceed. Kachit, whether, na, not. Ubhaya, both. Vibrasta, deviated from. Chinna, tone. Abhram, cloud. Iva, like. Chinna means torn. Iva, like. Nashyati, perishes. Apratishta, without any position. Mahabaho, O mighty armed Krishna. Vimudha, bewildered. Brahmana, of transcendence. Pati, on the path. O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in his sphere? So, there are two ways of progress in life, material and spiritual. So if one takes the materialistic path, he will have no interest or less interest in the spiritual path, but more interest in material advancement by economic development or promotion to higher planets. If one chooses, however, the spiritual path, one has to cease all activities and sacrifice all forms of so-called material happiness. So Arjuna is asking Krishna here, to achieve you, one has given up all material pleasures and taken to the yogic process. But it does not achieve you also because of yoga chalita manasa, deviation due to worldly mindedness. Na yahan raha, na wahan raha. Dhobi ka kutta, na ghar ka, na ghat ka. His situation has become so fragile. Doesn't his position become like a riven cloud? So Arjuna compares failed spiritualist to a riven cloud. Riven cloud is the cloud in the sky that deviates from a small cloud and joins a big one. But if it cannot join a big one, then it is blown away by the wind and becomes a non-entity in the big sky. Similarly, if the aspiring transcendentalist fails, then he apparently loses both ways. He can enjoy neither material happiness nor spiritual success. What is his destination? उसने आपको प्राप्त करने के लिए सब कुछ त्याग दिया, लेकिन मन का चंचलता के कारण वो आपको हासिल नहीं कर पाया. निश्चित रूप से उसका साधना में कमी हुई होगी. So in Kali Yuga, we appear to do a lot of bhakti. Arjuna knew that Kali Yuga is going to be a dikhavat, and dikhavat ka दुनिया. So ऐसे लोगों का क्या होगा? वो त्रिशंकु नहीं हुआ. त्रिशंकु आप जानते होंगे. This is Arjuna's question. I'm sure all of you know the story of Trishanku Maharaj. He wanted to go to Swarga, but still I will say in few words because I need a connection. So he wanted to go to Swarga in his self-same body. He approached many Rishi Munis with that request. If they could help him to go to Swarga in his self-same body. So they laughed at him and says, no, we can't do it. So they rejected his request. Ultimately, he goes to Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra, by his very name, Vishwamitra, he has no friendship with anybody. He has sabse jagda kar chuka hai. He has fought with everybody. But he said, I will fulfill your desire. So Trishanku goes to him and he says, using my Brahma Tejas, I will definitely give you Swargalok. He started a yajna and he was chanting mantras. And as he was chanting, Trishanku was going up and up until he reached the gate of Swarga. So gatekeepers in Swarga said they cannot admit him. They said trespassers are not allowed. On the other hand, Vishwamitra was saying, don't worry, I will see that you get the entry. But every time he was pushed back by the gatekeepers. So Trishanku was perplexed. But what is to be done? Ultimately, I appealed to Vishwamitra, do something. Otherwise, I'll fall down. So ultimately, Vishwamitra, with this power, created a new planet called Trishanku Swarga. So Arjuna is asking, if one is confronted with such a situation, what happens to that yogi? Is it not a Trishanku Swarga? So Prabhupada says here that the ultimate goal of successful transcendentalist is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Lord Krishna is the fullest manifestation of the absolute truth. And to reach this goal of life through Brahman and Paramatma realization takes many, many births. Bahunama Janma Namante. Bahunama Janma Namante. Therefore, the conclusion is that the supermost path of transcendental realization is Bhakti Yoga, the direct path. So we move to the last verse in this section, that is 6.39. 6.39. Yeah. Etanme samshayam Krishna chetumarhasya sheshatah twadanya samshayasya chetana hyupapadyate. Anybody?
एतन्मे संशयं कृष्ण छेतुम् अर्हस्य शेषतः त्वदन्य संशयस्य चेतानं हि उपपद्यते.
Good. Paramdal Prabhu.
एतन्मे संशयं कृष्ण चेतम् अर्हस्य शेषतः त्वद् अनः त्वदन्यः संशय यस्य चेतना हे उपपद्यते.
Okay. So we go to word meaning. Eta, this is me, my. Samshayam, doubt. Krishna, oh Krishna. Chetum, to dispel. Arhasi, you are requested. Aseshataha, completely. Tvat, than you. Anya, other. Samshayasya, of the doubt. Asya, this. Cheta, remover. Na, never. He, certainly. Upadhyate, is to be found. So this is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. So we'll quickly finish this. So Arjuna says, this is my doubt. I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one can help me. So these are the three things. What are the three things Arjuna says? I have a doubt. I need to dispel that doubt completely. And three, but for you, nobody can help. So when we have a doubt in our minds, it is necessary to get it clarified from Krishna or by his authorized representatives, our Diksha or Siksha Gurus. It is not a good reason for somebody not to come to Bhakti because we don't understand the instruction of Krishna given in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita instructions are quite complicated. It is not possible to understand when we read Bhagavad Gita. So many people think that Bhagavad Gita is so difficult, so there is no point in taking to Bhakti. So it is also not right that we accept whatever we hear as gospel truth, even what Krishna says, because many times in this case, as it happened to Arjuna, Krishna has explained it properly, but Arjuna has not understood it properly. So we cannot take it as a gospel truth and keep quiet without understanding the genesis behind it. So we should ask questions to remove our doubts, but at the same time, we should be careful not to keep asking questions to prove our points or simply for the sake of showing off our personal knowledge about the subject or just for time pass. So these are not the ways of updating our knowledge. So Kathopanishad says, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadat Kaman. Among all eternals, God is the primeval eternal. Among all conscious living being, God is the most conscious living being. Among all, Bhagavan is the sanctioning authority of all the needs of living beings. So we have to accept the instructions of Krishna fully. And he is the only person who is the perfect authority. So that is why Arjuna says, Krishna, you are the only person who can remove my doubt. So again, somebody might ask, why does he say that only Krishna only Krishna and nobody else. Because he knows the past, present and future. Also, no one is equal to or above Krishna. Certainly, the so-called great sages and philosophers who are at the mercy of material nature cannot equal him. Therefore, the conclusion is that the verdict of Krishna is final and complete answer to all doubts, because he knows everything, but no one knows him. On what basis Arjuna thinks or he expects Krishna to know everything? Because Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 2.12 explains the eternal individuality of every living entity. He says in 2.12, never was a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So this shows that Krishna must be the knower of the past, present, and future. So thus, Arjuna expects him to reveal the future of unsuccessful transcendentalists. So the conclusion is, Krishna and Krishna conscious devotees alone can know what is what. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you for